All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going out there? I think I know almost everybody who's here, so that's kind of exciting.
Oh,
But I think there's only about 15 of us, so maybe we can start with just kind of going around and introducing who we are, where we are, and if we have any experience in this winter weather preparedness. So I will call out some folks. First of all, I'm Jason Nauman. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I work with the Greenlands Tool Library, the Rockwood Common Tool Library, and the larger um, Portland Library of Things Network. I'm also in the partnerships group with the Tool Library Alliance. Um, we have had some major winter weather events that we have not responded to very well as a resource. So that's one of the main reasons I'm starting this conversation and really doing the work of trying to build that community, build those systems. So that's where I'm coming from. I will pass it over to Steve.
Thanks, Jason. Steve Bade, Toolbox Project, Tool Lending Library in Eugene, Oregon. About 700 users, 1,500 tools in inventory right now. 30-ish volunteers that are coming in to do open hours. About 160 people over our last 10 years have signed up to volunteer for us. We've typically suffered from weather events, ice storms that got called the ice apocalypse after the snow apocalypse, ice mageddon after the snow apocalypse about 4 or 5 years ago. So the issues are people getting around, shoveling sidewalks, stuff like that. People with the tool library slightly before my time were trying to, they got money to do disaster preparedness or something, and I just had a hard time. They didn't end up really doing anything. I had a hard time imagining, though, that the volunteer community that keeps the tool lending library open would actually be able to get out of their own driveways in order to go over to the library and help neighbors. I did have an idea, just yakking with my spouse, we could accept every snow shovel we're ever donated, and one of us who lives close by could just put them out, when there's some kind of event and just hope it's on our system and works. I will popcorn to Leanna.
thanks, Steve. Liana Frick, she, her, Station North Library in Baltimore. Um, we, I thought, didn't get snow anymore in Maryland, and in the last two winters it has snowed a bit. Um, so we may be on our way out of having winter weather. But yeah, we're kind of in the same boat where when it snows a bunch, we just close the library and hopefully people came and got their snow shovels. We rotate out our snow shovels seasonally. It caught us off guard. We got snow in the first week of January, which never happens here. So it is not a hugely pressing issue for us here geographically, but I am really curious to just hear how other folks are doing it. Yeah.
I will throw it over to Alan.
Hi, Alan from, well, I run the Library of Stuff in Hull in England. Our winter weather really, we suffer with things like flooding. Our flood defenses in Hull aren't great. And it seems to be like a knee-jerk reaction to provide people with equipment after the event to try and help them dry out their houses and all that kind of stuff. And then all that stuff that was given to them generally ends up on eBay or somewhere like that after the event. When we would prefer it all to come to a space where people could borrow it again. So we're hoping to open talks with the local government and talk to them about winter preparedness or flood defences, because this can happen any time of the year, obviously. And we had a major problem in 2007. I was actually at Glastonbury Festival when it happened, but the whole of Hull got flooded, and I came back up in my combi van, and I couldn't even get to my house because of the flooding everywhere. So that was a big event, and we've put major flood defences in, but we still suffer with flooding. I also work for Lend Engine, so we're very interested to see if there's anything that we can do within the system, to have the provision of winter weather stuff, and to make that more visible to people during the winter months, or whatever we can do there.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for coming out. Anna?
Hi there, I'm Anna, she, her pronouns. I'm in Seattle, Washington with Seattle Reconomy, Northeast Seattle Tool Library and Shoreline Tool Library. I would say pretty similar. Winter weather, we just sort of hide out. We have snow shovels and we don't really lend them. Yeah, Seattle kind of shuts down when it's snowing because of how hilly it is, but it'd be great if we could put them out and they could like disappear and come back at whenever people needed them. So yeah, excited to hear what people are learning about. Let's see. How about Tom with Shareable?
Howdy. Hey, I'm Wellen. I'm the executive director at Shareable and am the co-founder of the Asheville Tool Library, which I was super excited about the response this last fall to Hurricane Helene and everything, and was glad to have been able to be there at the beginning to help kick something off that was able to jump in when it was needed, like it did this last time around. I will pass it off over to Dante.
Hi, everyone. Dante here, calling in from Oakland, he, him. I am working on a project called Community Gearbox. We're a mobile-first platform that's trying to empower individuals and organizations to share, gather, and co-own items. And one of the first letters of intent that we received was actually from a disaster preparedness organization, with the hope of helping map resources in small communities, and then helping mobilize those resources thereafter. Candidly, I haven't had a lot of capacity, and I've kind of gotten pulled in a different direction this last year, but I'm returning to this space a little bit and really here to listen and learn. Check, and I'll pass it towards you, Max.
Cool. Hey, I'm Max, he, him. I help run the Capitol Hill Tool Library, also in Seattle, Washington. Not much to add. Yeah, we do get kind of spats of snow. February, I was just looking, we've only really loaned out snow shovel like once or twice a year. Would love to find a way to make them any, and someone like power. We have like a wheeled snow shovel that's really nice. Just get that out there and get it utilized by the community. I'll pass it off to Hazel.
Hey, folks. Thanks for letting me crash with you Tool Library folks again. So I'm a public library, Curtis Memorial Library in Maine. We do a lot of winter lending. Again, because we've been doing it for a very long time. If you don't know, Maine is known for one of the worst utilities. So it's not unnormal for you to lose power in Harpswell for 3 weeks. And so and then also we now are, although we are getting snow still, I actually have a program on that tonight. We will be a combo, we'll be about as wet as Seattle and as warm as Virginia. And our culverts are not sized for that. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than most bodies of water. So with that comes a different level of disaster preparedness. I'm going to put a link into the chat. We did a interview with Brazoria Library down in Texas, which their winters are very different than ours, but their tool library in their public library system has had a phenomenal response in their community from all humans. And they have really cool stuff and lessons to be learned. So that might be worth checking out too. And thanks for being here. Let's see, I'll pass it to Marley.
Hi, I'm Marley. I'm with Anna up at Seattle Economy at the Northeast Library in Shoreline. Excited to be here and learn more. Like I'm really interested in this right now. I saw Chris's message in the chat, and that's actually I'm really interested in the same thing. Just wondering, like we don't have any gas-powered tools at the library, and specifically we don't have any generators. And I'm wondering how the library can facilitate people lending items to each other that we don't carry during like winter or disaster times. And I'm also interested in learning more about Community Gearbox. Anna and I have been looking into that together and with our friends as well, and just trying to learn more about that and wondering how it can go hand in hand with the library.
I'm
I'll
gonna,
pa Oh, sorry.
I can pass it for you if you don't mind,
Thank you.
Riley. Hi. I'm gonna pass it over to Chris.
Thanks, Jason. Yes, so I work with Alan at Lend Engine here in the UK. I'm based in Wales, where we are coastal and get quite a lot of big winter storms. So last storm just before Christmas, most of the area lost power for nearly a week. And keeping the freezers going is important. But what was really interesting was the number of houses that are now all electric. They couldn't even boil a kettle. So somehow figuring out how to help these people heat their homes, but also camping equipment. So things like sleeping bags, cooking facilities, that's something we've seen. But here on the chat, I'm really interested to see what you guys are talking about and how we can facilitate that.
Cool. I'm gonna throw it over to Darren.
Hey everyone, Darren over at the Tool Library in Buffalo, New York. So you may recognize Buffalo from the blizzard of 1977, but we also had a pretty disastrous blizzard back in 2022. So 47 people lost their lives, and it was essentially the city unable to help and protect its citizens. So we saw a lot of mutual aid come out of that. There is the Buffalo Snow Brigade that developed, so just volunteer shovelers. So we don't do any direct kind of disaster response, but just finding ways that we can support other mutual aid efforts in our city. So really excited for this conversation. And I don't know who hasn't gone yet, so someone please help me with that.
Yeah, I think, have we heard from Megan yet?
No. Hey guys, I'm Megan Kaplan. I work for the city of Austin in Texas, and we, you may not be surprised to hear, don't get a ton of winter weather, but when we do, it's an absolute disaster because no one even owns a scraper for their car, let alone a driveway shovel. So definitely something I'm interested in learning more about what you guys are doing. We also don't really have a robust tool library at the moment. We have a pretty small selection of items through our public library system. So we're trying to figure out, I almost see this as fodder for an argument about why we need a more robust tool library to tell our city government and our leaders, like, hey guys, what about resilience? What about disaster response? So, really looking forward to hearing all your stories.
Cool. I think Jason Sanders, maybe the last
Hello,
one.
everybody. Yep. My name is Jason from the West Philly Tool Library. I have currently about 1,200 members and just over 4,500 tools. I would say snow and inclement weather is definitely something that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about, just because myself and staff, volunteers, everybody lives within like 2 blocks of the library. So oftentimes we forget about, how to react properly to winter weather / inclement weather, just because everybody walks there. And then nobody shows up, and then we're disappointed and say, no, we should have closed. But looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say.
Awesome. Did I miss anybody? Did anybody not get a chance to introduce themselves?
I didn't, but I popped on a little late. So my name is Kate Hersey, and I'm with the Minnesota Tool Library, and we get lots of winter weather. It's snowing right now. And I think the biggest thing for us is we do keep some gas-powered items on hand, although a very small limit of them. We found that like it was very hard to keep like snow blowers functioning in because shovels don't do it here. So we have them, but everybody has a shovel. That's not something we have to worry about. We worry more about the roof rakes, having our chainsaws for when the straight line winds come through, like they did earlier this fall. And I was out of power until about an hour ago today, but that was not so much from the snowfall, but from our pesky squirrels. So we do a lot of things in terms of managing those. A big thing that we do when we get donations of snow blowers and things in is we have a mini reuse store. So we really try to focus on some of those items that people aren't going to that they need immediately, selling them and making them available, and kind of refurbishment with that. And then all of our seasonal kind of emergency items are also set. Our standard loan is a week, but our seasonal items, like our roof rakes, nobody should need a roof rake for an entire week, right? So those loans are instead set to like a 1 or 2 day term, for us, so we can get as many people through. So that's like the biggest thing that we've done. Our staff don't some live within walking distance of our branches, but we generally just have a note where if the weather is really bad, I leave it up to my staff to choose. So whoever is running it that day can say, nope, I'm not going to make it in. And sometimes I'll have 5 minutes notice, which is really tricky. And sometimes I will have, a good 2 hours notice. And then we just blast social media as much as we can. And most people know if it's really bad and they show up. Luckily, Minnesotans are pretty good with going like, oh, I guess they closed because of the weather today and I missed the announcement. But they're pretty good with that for us, at least.
Cool. I'm just going to jump on real quick then now. Great to see everybody. It's been a really awesome opportunity to meet so many different library folks over the last year. Thanks to Tom and the folks over at Shareable for helping to facilitate some of that. Really glad to see everybody who's active on the Google group and joining into the Reddit and things like that. And hopefully some of the lessons that we learn here, or some of the questions that we have, we can develop into more of a formal presentation once we kind of find those answers. But just excited to have the opportunity to talk with everybody about some of these things. So I think I would say what we're trying to do here in Portland is I also was really excited about Dante's project with the community gearbox. That distributed lending system, I think, helps us to grow our library of things to include stuff that people have at their homes, whether that is a snowblower or a snow shovel or an ice pick or a chainsaw. We're not lending chainsaws, but knowing that chainsaws are out there in the community for neighbors who might need them is really helpful. And having that as a tool to really build a community, a trust-based community around kind of where those tools are. The other part to that is kind of mapping people's locations and then finding out, who is going to need help, who expects to need help, and then who doesn't maybe expect to need help, but you never know, right? And so that's kind of the work that we're starting in on now, is just inventorying all of our tools into that system so that anyone who joins our winter weather response team will know what's available from the library, trying to be proactive about saying, okay, we have a potential ice event that's coming up today. Anybody who is on our list, do you want to come and grab some of these supplies? Are you going to be ready potentially to go out and use them tomorrow? Or tonight, whatever it happens to be, and really being more proactive. So, and I think I did have the chance to have a conversation with Asheville in the WNC repair cafes. And the other part that I've really been thinking a lot about, and I'm curious if anyone has been doing this sort of work, is like having communications set up in advance, because when we got an ice event last year, we had 3 days I was without power. We had some people 6-7 days without power, and so if we're relying just solely on communicating over the phone, are we going to be able to actually do that? So having a preemptive plan of like, okay, if the ice storm gets really intense, maybe we meet at a couple of different locations just to check in and make sure everybody's okay, and have a system for distributing the human resources and like the tool resources that we have. So.
One point on that, if you're a warming center, which I'm not saying you are, but if you partnered with a warming center, they're on the priority list to get electricity back. And so if your warming center also has any electric trucks or any chargers, which most of them are trying now to have those, then you can I mean that's what we spend a lot of our time doing is charging people's stuff.
Hazel, while we've got you, it sounds like you are probably our most experienced person in this realm. Do you want to share a little bit more about kind of what you're doing with your community? What is the volunteer side of things look like on your end? Do you actually have people that you kind of coordinate with, or do you just have stuff available?
So there's a lot of different kind of agencies involved, I guess. So public library hat on. We're the warming center. Or we're one of them. And so we have priority access to when the power goes out, we can charge. But even when the power is not out, some libraries do stay open. We have in certain circumstances. And again, then we have different solar lights, different things because we can keep it warmer in our place than we can other places. That being said, we also have different agencies like we have a wood bank, which is giving wood to people in need so they can kind of be activated. We have shovel folks. So throughout the winter, before winter starts, you have people who you get paired with a buddy who, if you need help, you can apply to local radio stations to have people come shovel you out. There's just so many different kind of facets that have or options that have been created over time for this. And so we just tried to kind of plug in there. I would say for us, probably the primary thing we do is we have a lot of tools, like we have the snow, the roof rake, and all of that jazz. Um, because people are using it, but it's a really different depending on your use case. It really depends on what people want. Like, for example, right now we have a lot of folks experiencing homelessness. I know they would love us to have more portable heaters. We will not have portable heaters for a variety of reasons, um, legal concerns, all sorts of stuff. But I have a lot of discussions about winter camping with humans. Um, and we do have a partnership where we're hoping to get access to certain humans to have access to winter camping gear and all of that. So, but that's actually not for folks experiencing homelessness. That's not the goal. The goal to best serve folks experiencing homelessness, we're working with other agencies to help them do that. So it just really depends on who you're trying to serve, I think. Um, yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling because I was just going to listen, but I could, yeah.
That's great. Absolutely. Um, I just had a conversation on Monday with a group called Upstream Access that works really specifically with disabled community. And what
Hmm.
they kind of reminded me of is like if you don't have a disability, you're likely to age into one eventually. So it's something that should be at the front of everybody's mind. And so I think reaching out and starting to build that communication network is something that really is helpful for those folks. Um, and specifically, those are always the highest casualties when it comes to these disaster situations. And so really being able to support that part of the community is very valuable. Dante, is there anything, I see that you have a question here. Can you kind of clarify that a little bit and maybe ask the group?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of lift that up because Hazel, you're kind of mentioning it. In some of the early work that I was a part of, there's a lot of different initiatives at the federal, city, maybe other municipality levels. And I know up in the Pacific Northwest for a while, the community emergency hubs was a popular format that people were doing for maybe the last 10 years, but it also seems like it's kind of fading out of popularity and maybe funding. And so like I think right now there's a new one of like be 2 weeks ready, which is less emphasis on a community scale organizing and more emphasis on individual household. And I just was kind of curious if people are aware of or are participating in or connected with any of the kind of larger initiatives, because there is, I think the last few years with climate, people have pushed a lot into like emergency and disaster preparedness stuff. And I think there's an opportunity there for us to play well with those already existing initiatives and infrastructure. So just curious if people have any other examples or are aware of best practices or things that are working well.
Yeah, so here it's definitely 72 hours. But in that you should be able to be self-sufficient for 72 hours on everything. And if you can't be, for you, your pets, every medication, everyone. And then that's also increase it is the common word now. Now everyone's like, yeah, that better be a minimum. So we have a lot of people, keeping your freezers going and stuff. But when we got our bookmobile, the primary thing, we're a very small library compared to we're the like a really we tie for the most rural state, right? Between us and Vermont every other year. So a bookmobile is like really big for Maine, but not big for a normal library. But we made sure it was electric so that it could get to all those places and charge things for people for this very reason. But we also have a lot of solar lights, solar chargers, more for like important things like medical equipment, right? So that people can get access to that.
Yeah.
Dante, the structure that I think you might have mentioned or know about is community emergency response teams, where you get together with your neighbors and you find out basic things about where their gas line is, or their pets or little kids in the house, that kind of stuff. Who needs medication? Who's got a generator? Who's got a chainsaw? So that's fairly active in certain neighborhoods of Eugene, pretty spaced out. And part of that I was like, wow, when I was hearing about the whole deal in Asheville was we've got radio communications practicing on a monthly basis or more frequently. So, Jason, your scenario of quote talking to each other on the phone, or the scenario down in North Carolina where the anarchist bookshop bulletin board became the information hub. I mean, we haven't practiced this, we haven't talked about it, but another of the volunteers at Toolbox Project is also, I am, and she is also participating in the radio ready practice sessions. She's actually kind of in charge of parts of it, and I need to scope what I'm going to do. But every second Sunday, I get on and, confirm that people can hear me and I can hear them, and it's super different. It's really interesting to learn that. We have done things like practicing relays, so I can hear Jason, but I can't hear Hazel. So Jason relays my message to Hazel. And coming up, the CERT org and the Radio Ready people are getting together to do a training around filling out a damage form, and injuries form, so that you can give the needful information to the fire department or other first responders in a way that they can actually accept. One thing that's been interesting to learn about our particular region is the different emergency support organizations in Lane County use different radio systems and communication protocols. So just as a citizen, you think, oh yeah, they'll be talking to each other. And no, I mean, it takes a lot of engagement. It is going to take a lot of engagement. And yes, definitely spend money on this to get all of those first responder systems on a common communication platform, to the extent that they're able to help at all, 2 weeks later, just to share.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Steve, I just had a quick question for you since you're still connected. At least for me, it felt like certs were kind of at least less in fad or fashion. Maybe up in Washington, again, it might be state specific, but it sounds like at least down in Eugene and stuff that your certs are still pretty active. And I'm just curious if other folks like on the East Coast, do you all use the cert format as well? Is that it's pretty
a federal,
like across federal. Exactly. Yeah. I
it
was
is a
wondering.
federally supported
Yeah.
thing. I mean, the website's all still there. And a new
Yeah.
neighbor in town at the neighborhood picnic, was talking about cert this and cert that, and he was participating way more than I was, and he was from Southern
Cool.
California. And I was thinking, what? I thought we did that, Nope.
Cool. Glad to hear that certs are still up and running.
Yeah, Portland has a net program that's pretty similar. And I was just at one of their meetings this week, and it sounds like they have their group of folks that they train, but they don't really do a lot to like proactively build networks or really support those folks. So I would echo the comment that it is maybe a little, and sometimes it's kind of going out of fashion, sometimes it's coming back. Hopefully with this disastrous last 6 months we've had, it comes back to the forefront of people's attention. Tom, go ahead, Steve.
Portland, won't go on too long. Portland had a wonderful few-year run of disaster relief trials where cargo bike enthusiasts were, practicing disaster recovery after an event. And my sense of what happened up there was like what happened here. We did two or three of those here in Eugene, and boy, the ham radio nerds were out. You know, they were at all the check-in points, and there was a ton of volunteers. I mean, we in Portland are super bike makers and bike riders and all that kind of stuff. So that was definitely a part of it. But it seems like any one of us as individuals representing our tool lending library or not could find some slightly larger bubble to participate in and share the love about tool sharing and learn things and bring back to our orgs. It I was just dumbfounded that radios were not mentioned once in the whole description of what was happening at Asheville. I get that it's super hilly, but that's why you do relays, that kind of thing. And ham enthusiasts are all over the place.
Yeah, do you facilitate that network? Do you do like a ham radio building group or anything like that? Or are you just kind of connected to them, Steve?
I'm just participating in the practices with my GRS walkie-talkie because that's the level I can commit to, but we need foot soldiers. I can walk around the neighborhood and share news that somebody really does need help with the hierarchy above me, and they'll share it out and they'll share it out and they'll share it out, and then we'll share it back and say somebody's coming within the next couple of days, for example. Based on the meetings that we've been having just as immediate neighbors, and there's been more and less participation. I know these folks, my actual neighbors. We know some of the neighbors at the tool lending library as well. We could go knock on their door, any of these people, and say, shit's going on. How can we help? Do you need anything? Can you give me a hand with such and such so and so?
The other thing that I heard being talked a lot about in the Western North Carolina community was like having more public posting boards that aren't behind locked doors, so that like just places that are walkable where folks can go out and post that they need help or they know somebody needs help or they have resources. Kind of, I think they were calling it like a sort of an analog social media, um, where like you can just put up your posts and be able to respond without relying on technology. Tom, did you want to talk at all about the battery network toolkit, just to quickly touch on that?
Sure. Yeah. So we did our first collab in our new iteration of Shareable was to work with the People Powered Solar Cooperative in Oakland, which had developed this emergency battery network system when we were having a lot of planned power shutoffs around Northern California when the fires were happening back in 2020. They got their start on the day that kind of people referred to as Armageddon or being on Mars, where for us in the Bay Area, the sun didn't really shine all day long. It was just this strange red hue. And a lot of people were losing power because the utility was preemptively turning off the power to reduce fire danger, essentially. And so they created this kind of analog cooperative network of backup batteries, which could be distributed throughout the community. And then when there was like throughout different neighborhoods, essentially that were in different shutoff points. So as one neighborhood might get shut off, all of the resources could get distributed to that neighborhood that were needed. And then they would stay at the ready and charge, once that period of time was over. And then the people that were holding them would basically be hosts for those. And then they could get distributed the next time they're needed somewhere else. And so we have a full it was like about an 8-hour training, broken up into chapters and everything. It's like a lighter version of the Libraries of Things toolkit. And so that may also be of interest. And, just in light of current fires happening in California, I'm up in Santa Cruz, so very far away with a different landscape situation. I'm wondering, going to push it back to you again, Hazel. Have you been in touch at all with anybody out of the LA libraries? I know that I just learned recently that I think 5 of the different library branches in LA have tool libraries as part of their branches. And so I'm not sure if that, I mean, right now, of course, nobody's supposed to be rebuilding or trying to clean up or anything like that, right? But I was, wondering if
I'm
there's been
not.
any chatter.
Plenty of chatter. We're staying out of their way.
Yeah. Got it.
I absolutely will report back, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just a couple other things that I put in the chat. One, we do shareables. Our next collab or training series is going to be focused on mutual aid, starting mutual aid networks, growing mutual aid networks. We have a growing list of very accomplished speakers being kicked off by Dean Spade, who wrote the mutual aid book that came out during the pandemic that became really popular. So that'll be the first session. We've got folks from UC Berkeley, Sustainable Economies Law Center, Fight for the Future, kind of the International Humans Network of Humans United for Mutual Aid Network. Stephanie Rearick is going to be presenting as well. And so that's a free training that starts on February 19th and will be 4 Wednesdays in a row. And then we're going to do a series of kind of bonus tag on events that happen there as well. So we just, I mean, right before this call started, just posted the links for registering for that. And then ongoing, we have the Response podcast and film and kind of a book of sorts, an anthology that we produced years ago. The film was about Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria and all the mutual aid centers that kind of bubbled up from existing organizing networks and their lasting impacts on the island. We've done 13 audio documentaries to this point, looking at fires and floods and earthquakes, war, the impact of the Dobbs decision on reproductive access in the Southeast. So kind of pretty big range of topics. And then we have an ongoing podcast series as well. There's a new episode coming out tomorrow. So if you want to go geek out on the ways that different people are responding to disasters, that's another place to do it.
Awesome. I saw something in the chat about ham radio course up at Capitol Hill. Max, are you able to speak about that at all?
A little bit. It's not. I think this is one where I don't. It's not ham radio. It's
with Baofeng, but
Baofeng.
the
Yeah.
instructor was ham radio certified, and so they just like were able to
Cool.
speak on that. But it's not, you need the certification to use a ham radio, obviously. But it was a Baofeng radio, but they went through like all of their knowledge that they gained from like that they know about from certification.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think they provide really good curriculum. They provide a couple radios, and also I believe they charge $25 to purchase your own, and they facilitate that, or at least provide like a link. But yeah, it's. I think there's usually 5 or 6 people there, pretty consistently. A lot of it is, I think, the interest is around like organizing and like federated communication in outside of crisis. But it's
A lot of
definitely
like bike brigade, car brigade support for organizing. Yeah.
I love that idea though of the do-it-yourself thing, where you have that cookbook that you folks have already come up with at the tool libraries of these different types of things. So what if you did that for emergency response stuff, right? And taught all these classes. And a lot of us know how to make our own radios or make your own solar backup or we're collecting a lot of those and linking those to our tools. Like, what are you going to use this tool for? Use it for this cool project. And so a lot of our cool projects are associated with, sustainability of some sort. And so disaster response is one of those big versions versus like making more plastic goo, but maybe not that.
Yeah. Right. I think like the more skills that we have, the more resilient we are. So like sometimes it's helpful to refer to it as like disaster preparedness and readiness, especially when like we're talking about getting funding. But it really is, it's just preparedness in general, right? Just preparedness for whatever life can throw at you. And I think building those things into kind of not just a toolkit, but like a curriculum it would be really helpful all around. Let's see. What was my other thing I was going to talk about? Oh, so does anybody have experience with kind of like distributing tools ahead of time, whether it's actively like going out and getting stuff out or just sending out a message to your network and saying, hey, this is coming up. You should come and get stuff. And maybe, stay on our list and be ready to respond if someone sends out a call for help.
So there's a cool thing here where specifically, so like before a storm, everyone goes to the grocery store. It's like a thing in a lot of places. So one, that's really good to know because if you ever wanted to do like a pop-up, that would be like a great place to potentially partner with and go. That's what like the disaster libraries in Brazoria were doing often. They would bring their instead of Home Depot would let them in their store or in their lot and or Lowe's, I can't remember which, some big box. And they would bring a bunch of their tools and give them away for free. And the hour length of lending time would be an hour versus Home Depot liked it because everyone was going to go get their supplies they needed at the local store. Right. So I think that was a model and that worked really well for them. For us, we just started, we've wanted to do it for a long time, but we just didn't have the capital, but we lend out a lot of solar chargers and power backups. We also teach people how to make their own, obviously, but not everyone. It's just not a realistic thing. And so that's another thing. We also sometimes let folks know like Wi-Fi will be open even if for some reason we have to close the library. So a lot of people hang out and we have different chargers. So we extend our chargers outside of our building and things like that.
You said you teach people how to make your own solar chargers?
Yeah, you can do that. There's a lot of that type of stuff like on Instructables or Engineering for Change. There's a lot of good books on it too now. So I'm starting this list. It's on my to-do list to finish. Maybe I'll be motivated. Um, but yeah, so we keep meaning to compile some of it, but there's some good tutorials out there. And again, I think if a bunch of us got together, we could probably scale that.
The other thing that we have run into out here is all of our libraries are all electric. So if the power's out, yeah, that's definitely an out thing. But we do have a lot of like ice picks and things that can be really used to like just clear walking paths and try and like clearing out in front of storm drains and things like that. I think that's going to be a big part of our response is letting people know like what we can do to minimize the damage as the thaw comes. Letting them know that they can get those things in advance or get them quickly opening up on extra days. We're fortunate, somewhat fortunate. We'll see how it goes, I guess, to have a truck. And we're going to get some solar panels on there on Friday, thanks to Revolve Solar. So we'll have like a kind of a mobile charging station. But if the road is a total mess, we're a little bit limited on where we can go with that. But cool. Anyone else have anything they want to jump in on?
I guess Chris Lendengine here. I guess it's slightly related in that we are looking at making our locker solutions off-grid and solar powered. So if a library is shut and has no power, then people could come and self-access the things that they need, but we're just assessing the demand for whether that's needed, really a solar-powered off-grid self-access. So we'll be sharing that soon. It'd be good to hear what you think.
So, but the librarians still have to be there to stock it, right?
There's different models, so you can have different types of lockers, so stockable and non-stockable. Depends on how much you trust the community to share. So if there's a space that might be accessed by multiple members, or you could go down to the level of each space is assigned to one item, but that's not so efficient.
A lot of the gear libraries here do that. We put them at the head of trailheads and things, so you can just grab
Perfect.
your snowshoes and go. I mean, if there's snow, then it will be something else.
Yeah, we're really excited out here because again, we don't have a building, and so we're already kind of at capacity for the amount of stuff we can collect and share. So using both distributed lockers and the community gearbox tool will really allow us to like expand that network without becoming a warehouse of stuff. Just trying to create as many opportunities as possible. So I really like the idea of having that being off grid, having the opportunity for people within the trust network to go and add tools and then leave it. Maybe those things can become that sort of off-grid social media hub where you've got a communication board on that, and just really getting as many as we can distributed throughout our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think there might even be something along probably you're thinking about it, Dante, as well, is when you're looking at the peer-to-peer model, some way of having the two peers share their goods without having to be at the same place in the same time. So, yeah, peer A drops their item off, goes home, peer B comes up a bit later. So I think there's something to enable that as well you can look at.
Yeah, I think that would be
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll catch up with you guys later separately then on that.
I'd say one thing that you might not think of, but I think you all do, is it might be a service as well to think about is like if you are stuck at home for a long time, you know, that's something we also see before storm response is people coming in here not just for the emergency supplies, but we're stuck without power. And they're like, what am I going to do? Play a board game? Like, yes, in many circumstances, which I mean, it seems silly to say out loud, but it actually is like a real need. Um, so thinking of kind of making kits for that sometimes could be really great, especially for different age groups or different ability levels.
Yeah, we work with loads of libraries of things who do exactly that. You know, a large part of their inventory is board games. So toy libraries in particular, but yeah, we should recommend it to everybody. Have some board games.
Yeah, that
we
was
had someone in Hull who broke a leg and was going to be laid up for a number of months. And she came and borrowed our rock tumbling machine, and she brought it back, and she said, "Like this is the worst idea in the world. I had to listen to rock tumbles for days and days. She couldn't get it out of ear sight." But she came back with some really shiny rocks, so that's good.
I think the my upstream access conversation with the working with persons with disabilities, that's a big part of what their goal is as well, is to have that like mental health and making sure that people who are in those disaster situations really like have creative releases in ways that they can kind of keep themselves entertained and keep themselves mentally agile while they're dealing with everything else. So you can only sit and stare at the fire and think about how it's warming you for so many hours.
We don't have I don't think this is applicable to many, but we have two sleds that were donated that we loan out every winter for the one time it snows, which is saves some people from buying plastic thing and throw it away, and gives them something to do.
Well, we got about 5 minutes left. I think this has been, a really helpful conversation to kind of hear some ideas and hear some questions. Anyone have anything else they want to kind of add on at this point?
Just got one thing on how do you prioritize who gets your stuff? When it comes to a major incident of some description, if the news got hold of the fact that you've got access to this equipment and then you have queues of people, what do you do about that in that kind of situation?
That's not something I have an answer to. Hazel?
Make sure you have de-escalation training. If you don't, I highly recommend you get some. Who I would, and just is great in general, but there's a great, blanking on the name, but there's a great Ryan Dowd. He's for libraries. He's a homeless shelter director, and you can buy it for your entire team. He gives free stuff all the time. It's not perfect, but it's a good start. Because most folks, like once you get into the swapping mechanisms and things, I find you can really like, remember, we're all part of this community. Let's solve it together. You can really do that pretty well most of the time. I mean, I'm the major bouncer, and I know you can't tell, but I'm really not that buff. So, like at all. So, um, but it works out okay.
Kate asks the question, has anyone else explored incorporating a service ask with a priority loan to multiply the impact? So the example being, if you check out a snowblower, can you clear at least one other property, for example?
Yeah, it's a weird concept. It's one of the things that we had talked about when we were trying to decide whether or not it was worth it because of the square footage to hold things like snow blowers in our inventory. And the same thing as we look at our lawnmowers and things like that. And so we were trying to figure out, could we do something where we still own the snow blower, but we lend it out for a season, and part of you taking it for the season or for a month or whatever it happens to be is that you agree to not only clear your house but clear your block, right? And so there's a heavier ask, or make it available to all your neighbors to clear your block or that other property. And I was just wondering if anyone else had thought about doing something like that. We decided it was a little different, and most people own a snowblower, or when it's really, really heavy can come in just for the extra one. But
We were actually thinking of working with block clubs. So Buffalo has a really vibrant block club community. And again, we just don't have the square footage to have like 20 snowblowers. So that is something that I would love to pilot, where we could find one or two groups where it's like, hey, we'll loan this out to you for the entire winter. If you, as a block club, are willing to kind of set up an interloan system, or if you have a handful of people that want to do the whole block. But it is a pretty big ask, so we haven't found any candidates yet, but that is something that I would love to explore. And again, like something that we don't necessarily have to be super involved in. Um,
yeah, that was our issue. It was the time of trying to manage it.
I mean, I like that model, but what about leveraging partnership? We're the tool lending library. We don't want to own a snow blower, but we're gonna work with this block group who wants to buy one. We've got tool repairers. We've got off-season storage space or not, depending on your situation. It almost seems like, it's an obligation, but also at the same time an opportunity to partner and create community around these things, um, which all starts with getting to know folks and maintaining communications with them, which isn't easy, but that's where my head is going.
Yeah, and for those of us that are doing workshops and certainly repair cafes, trying to facilitate things. I know Repair PDX up here has they do repair cafes, but they also do classes and sessions that are really geared towards specific items, whether it's KitchenAid mixers or toasters, or more specific things. I don't know if they do a lot of small engine work. I think that's something Western North Carolina was also saying, that there's just a lack of small engine repair that's happening at repair cafes because it's messy, and it's really something we can't afford to lose. especially as we get more into this disaster readiness need.
We started decentralizing some of the repair and hopefully on the small engine thing are hoping to partner with our local community colleges on that. But now we kind of take appointments and stuff because we're using it to repair our stuff for Tool. So I think we haven't figured it out, but I'm going to copy some of you on the good ideas on that. I think there's some interesting collaborations that we could all work on there.
Cool. Well, that was an hour, folks. Didn't feel like it. I guess if anyone has any thoughts about, kind of how helpful this kind of a session was, feel free to speak up or put in the chat or send me an email or throw it on the Google group, whatever. I think we talked a little bit with the Tool Library Alliance today about kind of having these initial conversations as a group to figure out, who our experts in the room may be, what kind of questions we want answered, and then bringing folks in who can help facilitate those solutions. So that's something we're going to take from this conversation. I've got a recording and I've got the chat saved and notes and such. So hopefully anything we didn't figure out today, we can figure out together. Thanks as always to everybody for being awesome. Any last thoughts?
I'm really glad you all exist. Thanks for hanging out.
Same.
Indeed. Nice to see y'all.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Bye all.